What really decides a steeplechase final, speed, strength, or technique? In this video, we take you inside the women's 3,000-meter steeplechase at the European U23 Championships in Bydgoszcz and break it down step by step. You'll discover how the early slow pace shaped the race, which athletes positioned themselves perfectly, and how the final kilometer turned into a brutal test of endurance and focus. We analyze the key surges, the critical role of barrier efficiency, and the final sprint that decided everything. If you want to understand how elite steeplechase races are truly won, this is it.
Steeplechase from Ukraine, we saw just a moment ago. This is the European leader, Emily Moller. And on the inside, Aneta Konachek, the pole. It's actually the 1, 2, 3 on the European list. 23 list. So look out for Britain. That. Also running inside 10 minutes this year. Further away, and 15 women are Konachek, Poland, Matuse, Italy, Errol, Turkey, Scherer, Switzerland, Wien, Germany, Cohen, Israel, Mayer, Germany, Avioni, Italy, Navarro, France, Bakker, Netherlands, Moller, Denmark, Steeplechase, Ukraine, Pratt, Great Britain, Bydgoszcz, Romania, and Bydgoszcz of France. Well, they're taking it easy at this stage with Bydgoszcz of Romania. Towing them around the first 200 metres. Moller wearing the bib with the blue background as befits the role as the 23 list. See there in third place at the moment, Amy Prent. Moller, the European under-20 5,000-metre silver medalist 2 years ago. Also picked up a bronze medal over 3,000 metres. Converted in 2016 to a steeplechaser. Finished 5th at the World Under-20 Championships last year on this very track. She has run faster than the championship record of 9:36.14. She's not running at the sort of pace, well, these women aren't running at the sort of pace in this final. Escalade, well, we're back at the steeplechase. Bydgoszcz in front with Moller. Steeplechase has got up. He's just tucked in behind the two leaders. Starting to be a bit of daylight between the leading three. Rest. Went through 1,000 metres in 3:15.74. A decent pace. Concertina's back together again, and Konachek has got up and closed the gap. Bydgoszcz in 5th place. Also up there is Lisa Mayer, so 3, and then a slight gap, and then 3 more athletes close together. So at the moment it's Romania, Denmark, Ukraine, France, Poland and Germany. 6 nations nations represented in the top 6. And it is Mattuzzi trying to keep in touch with the leading 6. Chris Akaru's pace has certainly spread out the field. Mattuzzi's got up there, so it's now 7 athletes strung out. That's the leading group, and then a fair bit of daylight. Now Moller, well, 6:35.91, so a slower second kilometre. Records going to be broken in this event. We had 2 yesterday. Might have some more this evening. Perhaps not in this event, regardless of the fact that Moller's now starting to crank up the pace. Just under 2 laps to go. Stuttered a little bit before that hurdle, but she's still going very, very strongly. Strebakova hasn't tossed in the towel. Akaru hanging on. Still leading the way. She goes over the water jump for the penultimate time. 500 metres to go. Moller, 2 metres back, Strebakova, and then that's a 15-metre gap to Emily Wiedu, who's come through very strongly over the course of the last couple of 100 metres. Chris Akaru starts to flag badly. Into the final lap now. Very cleanly. Strebakova hasn't thrown in the towel though, she's still battling hard. Moller working well. Then a long gap back to Emma Wiedu. Wiedu rather climbed over that barrier, but she's still got a big gap over the rest of the field. Now Moller's a little change of gear, starting to pull away, and she can sense that the gold medal is in sight. She's coming into the home straight, 100 metres to go. Well, Strebakova now hasn't got anything to respond to the Dane. And it's going to be Emily Moller takes the gold in the women's 3,000 metre steeplechase. Denmark first.
The women's 3,000-meter steeplechase final at the European U23 Championships in Bydgoszcz was a textbook example of how this discipline is won not by raw speed alone, but by a precise combination of tactical intelligence, technical efficiency, and perfectly timed aggression. On paper, the field was closely matched, with several athletes entering around the 10-minute barrier, and that balance immediately shaped the nature of the race. Controlled, patient, and highly strategic. From the gun, the pace was deliberately conservative. No athlete attempted to impose an early tempo, which is typical in championship steeplechase racing, where positioning and rhythm matter more than fast opening splits. The pack remained tightly grouped through the first lap, and already the first key element of the race was visible: barrier efficiency. Unlike flat races, the steeplechase punishes even minor technical errors. Athletes who attacked the barriers with smooth, forward momentum preserved energy, while those slightly off balance were already forced into small but cumulative corrections. Through the opening kilometer, a shared responsibility at the front defined the race. Runners like Aneta Konieczek and Leah Meyer maintained strong positions without committing to a decisive move. This phase was less about gaining separation and more about avoiding mistakes. Every clean barrier clearance, every efficient stride pattern between obstacles contributed to energy conservation. The absence of an early surge meant the entire field remained in contention, increasing the importance of later tactical decisions. As the race progressed toward the halfway point, the dynamic began to shift subtly. The tempo increased not through a single decisive move, but through incremental pressure. This is where the technical demands of the steeplechase started to create visible gaps. Over 7.5 laps, even slight inefficiencies, an extra step before a barrier, a heavier landing after the water jump, compound into lost meters. The athletes with the most fluid technique began to edge ahead, not through acceleration, but through consistency. The decisive transition occurred just after the 2-kilometer mark. This is the phase where championship races typically evolve from controlled positioning into a true endurance test. The leaders increased the pace with intent, stretching the field and exposing any remaining weaknesses. The race fragmented quickly. What had been a compact group became a series of small gaps, each representing a difference in strength, techniques, or tactical timing. A critical factor in this phase was the water jump. Unlike standard barriers, it introduces both vertical and horizontal disruption. Athletes must judge takeoff perfectly to maintain speed through landing. At this stage of the race, fatigue begins to compromise precision. Those who maintained aggressive, confident attacks on the water barrier preserved their rhythm. Others, slightly hesitant or fatigued, lost momentum immediately on landing, and that loss became decisive over repeated laps. With 2 laps remaining, the race was reduced to a select leading group. At this point, the nature of the competition changed completely. It was no longer about managing energy, it was about deploying it. Every decision became critical: whether to surge before a barrier, whether to sit behind a rival, how to distribute effort across the remaining obstacles. The psychological component intensified as much as the physical one. Athletes had to commit fully, knowing that hesitation would result in immediate separation. The final lap captured the essence of elite steeplechase racing. After nearly 3 kilometers of sustained effort and dozens of barriers, the leaders found another gear. The pace lifted again, but now under extreme fatigue. Technique, which had been controlled earlier, now had to hold under pressure. Clean barrier clearance in this phase was not just an advantage, it was essential. A single inefficient jump could cost a medal. In the home straight, the race transitioned into a pure sprint finish, but even here, the earlier phases determined the outcome. The athlete who prevailed was not necessarily the fastest in absolute terms, but the most complete, combining endurance, technical mastery, and tactical patience. Behind her, the battle for the remaining podium positions reflected the cumulative demands of the race, with athletes fighting to maintain form after repeated physical and technical stress. Overall, this final illustrated why the steeplechase is one of the most complex events in athletics. Success depends on far more than aerobic capacity. It requires rhythm between barriers, precision over obstacles, and the ability to read the race as it unfolds. The progression from controlled opening laps to increasing mid-race pressure to an all-out final kilometer followed the classic championship pattern, but the execution separated the best from the rest. For these U23 athletes, this race was more than a competition. It was a demonstration of readiness for the senior level. The ability to manage such a demanding event under tactical conditions highlighted not only their physical preparation, but also their racing intelligence. In a discipline where every step, jump, and decision matters, this final stood as a clear example of how elite steeplechase racing is truly mastered.